He read it twice. Then once more, as if repetition could change the meaning. A sound rose from deep in his chest, something between disbelief and fury. He slammed the phone down and strode to the window. Outside, the city glimmered like glass, indifferent to his rage. "Damn her," he muttered. "And damn that old woman." He knew what had happened. He could almost see the strings. Mrs. Kong had likely pulled them one by one. The wives, the ministers, the quiet dinners that ended with loyalty instead of deals. And now Aaliyah Johnson, the outsider, the unknown variable, had turned public opinion like a compass shifting north. His empire of precision was collapsing in silence. A knock at the door broke his thoughts. His assistant peeked in, hesitant. "Sir, the emergency board meeting has been rescheduled. Madam Kong requested it be held at the main headquarters." Ethan turned, his jaw set. "She requested?" "Yes, sir. She also invited the press to wait in the lobby. Says she wants full transparency." A bitter laugh escaped him. Of course she did. When the door closed, Ethan poured himself a drink and stared into the amber glass. They think they've won. But a voice inside him whispered that maybe they had. He'd built his power on perception, and perception had just shifted against him. He sat in the dim light for a long time, the city noise rising far below, and for the first time since he joined K Global, Ethan Seo felt something he couldn't reason or strategize away. Fear. Across the river, in the Kong estate, Mrs. Kong watched the same broadcast in silence. The corners of her mouth curved slightly, not in triumph, but in acknowledgement. "She did it," she murmured. Mr. Han nodded. The interview's spreading everywhere. Investors are calming. Ethan's support is crumbling. "Good," she said, setting her teacup down. "Then it's time to end this." She turned toward the window where the early evening light shimmered across the skyline. "Call the driver. I'll attend the board meeting myself." Her eyes hardened. No one topples a Kong without learning what endurance truly means. The boardroom on the 72nd floor of K Global Tower had always been a theater of composure, gleaming marble floors, glass walls, and the city's skyline spread like a crown beyond. But this morning, the air inside vibrated with tension. Executives filled the long table, voices hushed, expressions unreadable. Cameras from the financial press lingered outside the door, by Mrs. Kang's design. The world would see the company's soul laid bare. When the doors opened, silence fell. Mrs. Kong entered first, poised as if the chaos of the last week had never touched her. Behind her, Min-jun followed, sharp in a dark suit, his face calm but resolute. And just behind him, slightly hesitant but steady, walked Aaliyah. The murmurs began immediately, whispers, shifting eyes, the unspoken question of why she's here. But Min-jun didn't falter. He guided her to a seat beside him, his hand resting briefly at the small of her back, not possessive, but grounding. A public gesture that said, "She belongs here." At the far end of the table, Ethan rose from his chair, his usual smooth confidence fraying at the edges. "Madam Kong," he said tightly, "I wasn't aware this meeting was open to personal guests." Mrs. Kang's gaze cut across the table, cool and unwavering. "Ms. Johnson is not a guest. She is part of the narrative you tried to weaponize against my family. I thought it fitting that she be here when we dismantle it." A ripple of restrained surprise traveled through the room. Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're turning this into a spectacle." She smiled faintly. "No, Mr. Seo. You did that when you leaked private conversations to the press." A pause. The weight of her words sank in. Min-jun leaned forward, voice even but edged with steel. "We have the records, Ethan. The emails, the payments, the meetings you arranged with the rival investors. You used my absence to destabilize this company." Ethan laughed once, bitterly. "You can't prove." Already submitted to the board, Min-jun interrupted, sliding a folder across the table. "And to the legal department. You can read them before they decide your replacement." The color drained from Ethan's face. Around the table, murmurs grew louder, shock, vindication, disbelief. Mrs. Kong rose slowly. "This company was built on trust, not manipulation. You mistook silence for weakness, Ethan. That was your first mistake. Your second was underestimating a Kong. Her words fell like gavel strikes. Ethan stood abruptly, knocking over his chair, then froze, realizing every camera outside could hear the commotion. He straightened, face pale, and left without a word. The door closed behind him. Silence. Then applause, hesitant at first, then swelling. Min-jun exhaled slowly, shoulders lowering. Across the table, Aaliyah's eyes met his, a mixture of relief, pride, and disbelief. Mrs. Kong placed a hand on her grandson's shoulder. Now rebuild it, she said softly. But this time, on your own terms. He nodded. I will. Then, as if sensing it was finally over, he turned to Aaliyah. Come with me. They stepped out onto the balcony adjoining the boardroom, the same balcony where he once confessed his fears. The city below buzzed with life, unaware of the war that had just ended above it. Aaliyah's voice was quiet. It's really over, isn't it? He looked at her, eyes soft. The fight is. But the story's just beginning. She smiled, small, luminous, certain. And for the first time in weeks, Seoul's sky seemed to clear. Spring came to Seoul with shy blossoms and the scent of rain. The city, once vibrating with scandal and speculation, had settled into a slower rhythm. Billboards that once bore headlines about K-Global now advertised summer concerts and new fashion lines. In the corner office at the top of the tower, Min-jun Kong stood by the window, the skyline reflected in the glass. His tie was gone, his sleeves rolled up, an image far from the cold, distant CEO he once was. He had rebuilt K-Global in quiet ways, transparent partnerships, mentorship programs, innovation labs that carried his father's ideals, but none of his rigidity. Investors had returned. The board, reshaped under his leadership, no longer whispered but listened. The office door opened softly. Aaliyah stepped inside, tablet in hand, wearing a simple cream blouse and light gray slacks, elegance wrapped in ease. Her hair was loose today, falling over her shoulders in waves. Your afternoon meeting moved to 3, she said, walking to his desk. And your grandmother insists you eat lunch before then. She threatened to come feed you herself. He smiled, the kind that reached his eyes now. That sounds exactly like her. Aaliyah set the tablet down and leaned against the edge of the desk. She's in good spirits. She's been talking about retiring from everything, except giving opinions. Min-jun chuckled. Retirement won't stop her from running the family with a single phone call. A soft pause followed, the kind that felt like breathing, not hesitation. He looked at her for a long moment. You know, he said quietly, every time I walk into this office, I still expect chaos. Headlines, protests, something. And instead you get peace, she murmured. You earned that. He tilted his head slightly. We earned that. Their eyes met. That same spark that had once been wary now settled into something deeper. Recognition. A knock broke the moment. Mrs. Kong herself entered, still regal even in a simple hanbok of soft lavender. Good, she said, surveying them. You're both still working instead of running away to the countryside like normal young people in love. Aaliyah laughed softly. We've thought about it. Then stop thinking and do it, Mrs. Kong said, but her smile gave her away. The world will keep spinning. It doesn't always need your hands on it. Min-jun approached and took her arm gently. Hermione, I don't think the company would have survived without you. She patted his hand. It survived because you remembered what kind of man you wanted to be. And because she, her gaze softened at Aaliyah, reminded you that heart is not weakness. The older woman turned toward the window. It's funny. Your grandfather once told me love makes empires fragile. He was wrong. It makes them human. That night, the city lights blinked across the Han River, and from their apartment balcony, Aaliyah and Min-jun watched them in silence. The wind brushed her hair across her face. He reached out to tuck it behind her ear. Florida feels like a lifetime ago, she said. It was the start of one, he replied. She smiled, leaning against him. You think your grandmother's serious about retiring? She's already planning a foundation in your name, he said dryly. So yes, very serious. She laughed, the sound soft against the hum of the city. Maybe that's her way of saying she approves. He kissed her temple. She's had a way of saying it all along. We just had to listen. The sky stretched wide and clear above them. No headlines, no noise, just the quiet, steady rhythm of two lives finally in sync. The night Seoul celebrated the 10th anniversary of K-Global's founding. The city gleamed brighter than ever. Lanterns floated along the river, fireworks poised to bloom against the spring sky. The company had recovered not just financially, but spiritually, a rebirth written in lights. At the center of it all stood Min-jun, poised and serene beneath the glass dome of the event hall. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie, a quiet rebellion that had become his signature. Around him, diplomats, investors, artists, and staff mingled with laughter and champagne. But his gaze was searching for one person. Aaliyah appeared near the edge of the crowd, her gown a deep shade of emerald that shimmered when she moved. Her hair was swept up, a few tendrils brushing her shoulders. When she smiled, that calm, grounding smile he'd first seen in Florida, the noise around him seemed to fade. She joined him just as Mrs. Kong took the stage for her short address. My friends, the old matriarch began, her voice rich and steady. This company was founded on vision, but it survived because of courage. Courage to change, to love, to begin again. She turned, looking toward her grandson and the woman at his side. And sometimes, courage takes the form of two people daring to build something no one thought possible. A hush rippled through the crowd as lights dimmed and soft music began, the sound of piano and violin filling the hall. On the wide glass wall behind the stage, a projection lit up. Images of Seoul through the seasons, cherry blossoms, monsoon rain, autumn gold, ending with a photograph that no one had seen before. It was from Florida. A candid shot of Min-jun and Aaliyah, taken unknowingly by a passerby the day they first met. Her laptop in his hands. Both of them mid-apology, eyes locked. A murmur spread. Aaliyah turned to him, stunned. You? He smiled, stepping closer, his voice low but steady. I asked the cafe owner for their security footage months ago. I wanted to keep the beginning, to remember where everything changed. He guided her gently to the center of the room. The crowd fell completely silent. Min-jun dropped to one knee. No flashbulbs, no reporters, just the quiet echo of the hall and the heartbeat of the city beyond its glass walls. Aaliyah, he began, his voice thick with emotion. You once told me love asks for courage. I didn't understand then how much courage it would take to face my world, to face myself. But you showed me that courage doesn't roar. Sometimes it just stands steady and believes. Her eyes glistened, and he smiled faintly. I don't want to spend another day proving anything to anyone. I just want to build a life that feels like peace with you. He opened the small velvet box. Inside, the ring shimmered, a simple design of white gold, its band engraved with two symbols, a Korean hanja meaning faith and an English word, begin. Aaliyah's breath caught. Yes, she whispered, the word trembling through the stillness before he could even ask. The hall erupted in applause, warm, unrestrained, real. Mrs. Calm clapped first, her eyes glistening though her smile remained perfectly composed. Min-jun rose and pulled Aaliyah into his arms. For a moment, the lights, the music, and the noise all blurred into the steady rhythm of their breathing. Above them, through the glass dome, the first fireworks burst across the sky. Gold, white, and emerald green. Seoul, the city that once questioned them, now lit up around them like a blessing. 1 year later, the morning light poured through the wide windows of their Seoul apartment, casting gold across the white curtains and the pale wood floors. The city hummed faintly below, that familiar sound of life, busy yet comforting. Aaliyah sat on the balcony with a cup of coffee, wearing one of Min-jun's shirts. The air was cool, carrying the scent of jasmine from the planter boxes she'd filled months ago. Inside, Min-jun moved quietly around the kitchen, barefoot, sleeves rolled up, his hair a little tousled. He wasn't the immaculate CEO right now. He was simply Min-jun, the man who laughed too easily before his first sip of coffee, who still tried to cook even when his omelets ended in surrender. "Don't burn anything," Aaliyah called softly. He leaned out of the kitchen doorway, smiling. "That's a bold assumption, assuming there's anything left to burn." She laughed. "That's fair." He brought over 2 plates, 1 omelet, 1 beautiful disaster, and set them on the table beside her. The sunlight hit the ring on her finger as she reached for her cup, and he paused just to watch the reflection. It had been a year since that night under the fireworks. A year since the world watched a man kneel before love, not as a spectacle, but as truth. The headlines had softened with time. The company flourished quietly, its new programs now serving both Seoul and international communities. Aaliyah had built her own small foundation, a digital literacy project for underrepresented youth, and it was thriving. But what mattered most were the small things, the shared mornings, the quiet talks after midnight, the knowledge that neither of them needed to run anymore. She looked at him then, the soft lines of sunlight tracing his face. "You know," she said, "sometimes I still think about that day in Florida." He chuckled. "The day I almost ruined your laptop? The day you changed my life," she corrected, her voice a whisper. He reached for her hand. "You changed mine first." A pause. The city moved beneath them, endless and alive. Mrs. Kong was due to visit later that afternoon, her first outing in weeks since stepping back from public life. She'd promised to bring something old and something wise, which Aaliyah suspected meant more stories and maybe a few subtle instructions on grandchildren. Min-jun smiled faintly at the thought. "She says she's writing a book," he murmured. "Really?" "Title's still undecided," he said. "But I think it's something about legacy and how love rewrites it." Aaliyah leaned her head on his shoulder. "That sounds like her." For a long while, they sat in comfortable silence, the kind that had no need for words. Then, as if remembering, Min-jun reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "An anniversary surprise," he said, handing it over. "Don't open it yet. Then when we get there." She tilted her head. "Get where?" He grinned, the boyish spark returning to his eyes. "Back to where it all started. Florida." The letter inside was a pair of plane tickets, a quiet promise to revisit their beginning, not as strangers colliding but as soulmates returning home. Aaliyah smiled, blinking back sudden warmth. "You really are sentimental." "Only when it comes to you," he said softly. He kissed her then, sunlight spilling over them, the city breathing beyond. And somewhere, across oceans and years of lessons, love had become what it was always meant to be, not a storm to survive, but a home to live in. The world outside moved fast, as it always had. But for them, in that balcony bathed in Seoul's morning light, time stood still, steady, golden, endless. Forever had already begun. This ending closes their arc in a way that's emotionally full but peaceful. No cliffhanger, no excess drama, just earned, lasting love.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, leave us a comment. Also share and subscribe to our channel, and click on the notification bell to get notified whenever a new story is made.